The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The light comes first. Not darkness unfolding into something, light arriving, sudden and total and without mercy, the way a blade lands. Crystal light, prismatic, scattering across every surface in broken spectrums of teal and white and deep cyan. And the sky above him is brilliant white-blue and he is breathing. Not the mechanical compression of recycled air through filters and pressure seals. Not the click hiss of a respirator cycling at the precise interval that keeps a ruined body functional. Breathing, his own chest, rising on its own, pulling in air that tastes faintly of minerals and recent blaster fire. He does not panic. Darth Vader does not panic. His first thought, before identity, before location, before the full weight of what has happened can arrive, is this: Force sensitives in range. He counts them the way a surgeon counts instruments before closing a wound. 2. Relatively close. 1. A master. Calm, practiced, the unmistakable steadiness of Obi-Wan Kenobi working somewhere in the mid-distance. The other fainter, further, brief and bright like a struck match. Unknown, he files it. Then he looks at his hands. The right arm is mechanical. It has been mechanical since Geonosis, since Count Dooku's blade separated it at the forearm, and the Kaminoan medics fitted this replacement, its synthetic skin still intact and functional. A 19-year-old prosthetic that hasn't yet spent 2 decades inside an armored gauntlet. He has had it long enough, in this life, to stop noticing it. He does not notice it now. But the left hand. He raises it, turns it over in the crystal light. The palm is unmarked, no scarring from Mustafar's volcanic rock, no damage from Obi-Wan's blade. No burn scar from the moment the lava bank caught and held, and he realized he was going to survive in the worst possible way. Real flesh. All 4 fingers and a thumb responding through real nerve endings, warm from the mineral air, unhurt. He flexes, slowly. The sensation that comes through is overwhelming, the granular texture of crystal dust against his palm, the warm resistance of the air when he closes his fist. A hand that stops being his at Mustafar, that he last truly felt the morning of his wedding and then stopped feeling at all somewhere above the lava river. It is here. It is whole. He does not weep. He notes it. He stands. The body rises with the easy strength of 19 years in both legs. The legs that burn away above the knee on Mustafar, that he last walked on without mechanical assistance before the suit was sealed, bear his weight on their own. No servos, no hydraulics, just muscle and bone and the body the Force gave him the first time, mostly intact. He is standing on the crystal surface of Christophsis, 22 BB. He knows the planet from memory. Knows the date from the position of the twin suns, and the silence where the separatist energy shield used to hum. The shield generator is gone. He destroyed it. The boy whose body this is destroyed it, sometime in the last hour, in the life before the life that has just slammed back into a chest that no longer requires machinery to keep it going. The battle is won. Crystal dust is still settling across the megaliths. Blaster smoke rises in thin columns through the prismatic air, each column fracturing the light into a dozen colored edges. He died redeemed. He threw Sidious into the reactor shaft and felt the Force beginning to leave him, and he was, in the single quiet moment before the end, genuinely glad. He had earned that. He had not expected another. The galaxy has handed him a second weapon. He exhales, long, deliberate, pressing his Force presence inward and down through his chest and into the ground, the way a man shuts a vault he does not want opened, and walks back toward the command post. Captain Rex finds him first. He is exactly as Vader remembers him, the set of the jaw that communicates competence before the mouth opens, the wary precision in the eyes of a man who has survived enough bad decisions to respect the mathematics of a good one. He's carrying a data pad, moving at the practiced pace of someone who assumes the general will be wherever the trouble concentrates. "General," Rex says. Grievous jumped to hyperspace when the field went down. No pursuit capability, our gunships are running on reserve fuel cells. Casualties are light compared to projected. Lieutenant Hawk is asking about resupply timing. Vader Anakin listens. He nods twice, in the places Anakin Skywalker would nod. He asks 2 questions, fuel cell ETA and whether the local population has begun emerging from shelter, and listens to both answers with the attentiveness of a man who is also doing something else entirely. Rex is watching him with the careful quality that good soldiers reserve for situations they cannot fully explain. He has been serving under Anakin Skywalker for months. He is not, Vader Anakin notes, accustomed to this particular stillness. Vader Anakin does not register Rex's scrutiny as a problem. He registers it as data. This is the man who, in another life, pulled his helmet visor down and aimed at Ahsoka Tano and tried, with everything left in him, to stop himself, and couldn't. Who dug a grave on Selos when he thought she was dead, and dug his own alongside it because he didn't know another way to grieve. Who was loyal to 2 brothers and a ghost for years after the galaxy ended. Rex's inhibitor chip is in his brain, dormant, a leash on a free man who doesn't know he is leashed. He is at the top of the list. Tell Hawk the resupply convoy is 12 hours out, Vader Anakin says. Start casualty reports. I want names, not numbers. Rex tilts his head. Fractionally, the particular way clones register surprise without performing it. Generals ask for numbers. Yes, sir. The shuttle descends from the northern approach. A diplomatic transport. Republic seals on the hull, making 2 cautious orbits before settling onto the cleared Crystal Plaza. The landing struts compress with a low hiss. Around the landing zone, troopers take automatic notice and automatic dismissal. Not a threat. A courier. Vader Anakin does not take automatic notice. He already knows what is inside it. He watched this shuttle land once before, the first time, from a position of irritation and insufficient sleep, and the privately wounded arrogance of a young man who did not understand what was being given to him. He had not wanted a Padawan. He had especially not wanted one who arrived without his consent. Carrying a hollow message like a package, for a person who hadn't ordered anything. He had not understood then what she would become. He understands now. The hatch opens. She comes down the ramp at 14 years old, small montrals close to her skull, not yet the wide striking arcs of the woman she will grow into, her face carrying the particular fearlessness of someone who has not yet failed in the way that teaches you fear. She has the hollow message in her hand. She is looking at the Crystal City with the wide-open attention of someone who finds everything interesting and wants to understand why. Then she looks at him. She slows. He is watching her with the complete stillness he is beginning to practice, the total absence of surprise, the cataloging quiet of a man who is recognizing rather than discovering. No 19-year-old watches the world like this. What she knows is that the way her new master is looking at her feels less like an introduction and more like something she doesn't have a word for. He left her on Malachor. The temple fell, and he walked away and told himself she was already dead to him. He lied. He has been lying about it ever since, and has not been allowed to correct it. She is walking toward him at 14, not yet broken, and something behind his ribs that has not moved in 25 years shifts a fraction of an inch, and he clamps it down, pressing his left hand flat against the nearest crystal pillar, feeling the cold surface against his palm, one long breath out through his nose. And by the time she reaches him there is nothing on his face but a calm that reads, to anyone watching, like confidence. Ahsoka Tano, he says. She stops. She is still holding the hollow message. She has not given it to him yet. The manifest, he says, before she can work out the geometry of the problem. A briefing from Master Yoda came ahead of your transport. I read it on the approach. She takes this in. Her eyes move across his face, quickly, very quickly, and file something. He notes the filing. You're Anakin Skywalker, she says. I am. And you already know why I'm here. That you've been assigned to me. Yes, a pause. She squares her stance in the way that means she has decided to be professional about something she is not entirely comfortable with. And? He lets the corner of his mouth move. Not quite a smile. Almost the memory of one. And you're late. The battle was this morning. The 14-year-old's response assembles itself briefly in her expression, irritation chasing professional composure, composure winning by a short margin. She holds up the hollow device. I was supposed to deliver this. Keep it, he says. Consider it practice. He turns and walks toward the command post. He does not look back. He can feel her in the force behind him, bright, sharp, and already, filing observations about him she doesn't yet have the framework to interpret. He does not intend to fail her again. The Octopterai tri-droid is at the battle perimeter's far edge, half buried in crystal rubble. Its 3 legs folded at the angles of a thing that is stopped. A heavy model combat unit. Its power core housing shows no visible damage. A trooper logged it dormant 40 minutes ago and moved on. It is not dormant. Vader Anakin feels it restart the way you feel temperature change before you see it. Not the thing itself, just the air around it shifting. The droid's targeting array cycles up in the 3 seconds before its sensor suite fully rotates. In those 3 seconds, the geometry of its firing arc sweeps directly across the cluster of troopers near the landing zone. Ahsoka Tano is watching the crystal skyline with the systematic attention of someone cataloging a new world. He doesn't reach for his lightsaber, doesn't raise his arm, doesn't alter his stride or shift his weight or do anything that a 19-year-old Jedi Knight returning from a won battle would not do. He simply applies Force Crush, compressed telekinetic pressure around the droid's power core housing in 2 seconds. The machine folds inward, not an explosion, a collapse, the housing crumpling in silence, internal systems failing in cascade. The tri-droid dropping back into the rubble with the quiet finality of something that has simply ceased to be a problem. Rex stares at the droid. He looks at the sky. He looks at the surrounding terrain. There is no artillery position, no secondary explosion, no other hostiles in range. Ahsoka stares at Anakin. Anakin is already walking toward the command post. His voice carries back over his shoulder without effort. Shield generator was set to overload. Residual shockwave. Don't stand near disabled hardware. She doesn't believe him. She stands in the fractured crystal light and watches his back and does not believe a word of it, and she knows that she doesn't believe it, and she stands there a moment longer than she should. Memorizing the specific quality of his stillness, he does not turn around. He had spent 26 years as a weapon. Now, for the first time, he was also a surgeon. The difference was patience. And patience he had learned from death. 500 Republica is a building designed to communicate. Every surface says the same thing. Power lives here, and has for a long time, and is not concerned about you. The corridors from the main entrance to the private executive levels are 40 meters of polished stone and low indirect lighting, and the Senate guards posted at intervals have been positioned by someone who understood ceremony better than tactics. Vader Anakin clocks 2 gaps in their rotation on the first pass, one near the third alcove, one at the corridor's turn before the private reception room. Not gaps that matter to a petty thief, gaps that matter to someone with the Force and a reason to move quickly. He notes them. He files them. He will not use them today. The door to Palpatine's private office is gilded, not a decision about taste, a decision about message. A man who gilded his door made a choice about how others should feel when they approach him. Vader Anakin stands outside it for exactly the length of time it takes a 19-year-old Jedi Knight to compose himself before a meeting he has been looking forward to. Not long, just long enough to look young. He goes in. Palpatine rises when he enters. This is the detail Vader Anakin remembers most clearly from the first time he lived this scene, the rising. A Supreme Chancellor does not rise for a Padawan. The rising is a gift, calibrated, deliberate, the physical performance of a man who needs you to believe you matter to him more than protocol requires. Palpatine has been giving this gift for decades. It costs him nothing. It has bought him everything. Anakin, he rounds the desk with the unhurried warmth of a man setting aside whatever was on his datapad, because you are more important than whatever was on his datapad. I heard the battle at Christophsis was resolved brilliantly. Please, sit. You must be exhausted. Vader Anakin sits. He lets his posture open slightly, not Jedi formal, not fully at ease. The precise posture of a young man who is beginning to feel comfortable in this room, but is not quite there yet. A man who wants to be here. The shield generator was the key, he says. Once that came down, the droid lines had nothing to anchor to. It wasn't complicated. Modest, Palpatine says, as though modesty is endearing rather than a data point. He settles behind the desk. Behind him, through the wide viewport, the Senate dome rises against the Coruscant skyline, and below it, the city falls away in layers of light and traffic. The council noted your results. Master Windu was characteristically restrained in his praise. There it is. The first placement. Vader Anakin lets a fraction of something move across his face. Not frustration, something softer. The expression of a young man who has come to expect this and is practicing being gracious about it. Master Windu is thorough, he says. He is. Palpatine's voice is warmed water, smooth, ambient, carrying nothing sharp on the surface. He is also, I think, a man who finds uncommon power somewhat difficult to accommodate, particularly when it arrives from a direction the Order did not anticipate. The mechanism is elegant. Vader Anakin can hear every gear turning. Step 1. Establish that the Council's restraint is personal, not principled. Step 2. Position the man behind the desk as the only person who can see past it. Step 3. Allow the young man's hunger for recognition to complete the circuit. He believed every word. He was 19 and afraid and already carrying more than anyone his age should carry, and the Council kept looking at him like a problem they hadn't solved, and Palpatine was the only person in any room who looked at him like an answer. He wanted it so badly, he swallowed the hook whole and never felt it go in. He watches Palpatine the way a forensic specialist processes a scene. Cataloging methodology, noting signature, working backward from the evidence to the hand that placed it. Not afraid, not flattered. Hunting the Council does what it believes is right, Vader Anakin says. He lets a breath out through his nose, just slightly too measured, the breath of a man managing something he is not ready to name. I trust their judgment. The emphasis lands on trust, not agreement. Palpatine's eyes shift, fractionally, the micro-expression of a man revising a calculation, and Vader Anakin clocks the revision with a satisfaction he does not allow to reach his face. The boy has developed slightly, more self-aware than at their last meeting. The gap between trust and agreement, noticed and named. Palpatine files it with the pleasure of a collector adding to a set. Of course, Palpatine says, with the warmth of a man who respects a closed door while making clear he knows where the key is. You have always been more generous in that regard than they perhaps deserve. A pause, brief, loaded, the kind that functions as punctuation, and then. Without breaking stride, I simply hope you know that whatever the Council's limitations, you have a friend in this office. Someone who sees not what you are now, but what you are becoming. Vader Anakin holds the eye contact for one beat past comfort. What is in his expression is this, a young man who has been waiting, without admitting the waiting, for someone to say exactly this. He has constructed it carefully, borrowed from his own memory of how he looked at 19 when these words first landed, reproduced from the inside out, the way an actor produces a real tear by finding the real grief underneath the performance. That means more than I know how to say, he says. Palpatine smiles. The smile reaches far enough to read as genuine from any angle that isn't directly behind his eyes. The meeting runs another quarter hour. Tactical summaries of the war's third week. A careful conversation about the Jedi Council's expanding military authority and Palpatine's expressed concerns about institutional precedent. The Order was not designed for governance. And a second placement. And a third. A man of your instincts must sometimes feel the pace, and Vader Anakin feeds small confirmations at each turn. Not dramatic ones. The agreement that comes a beat late, worded too carefully. The question that implies a dissatisfaction the speaker hasn't examined. He is laying a track, and Palpatine is following it with the confidence of a hunter who believes he found the path himself. When Vader Anakin stands to leave, Palpatine walks him to the door. Another gift, always the walk to the door, and places one hand briefly on his shoulder. Take care of yourself, Anakin. The galaxy needs what you carry. Vader Anakin looks at the hand. Then at the man. Yes, he says. It does. The secure quarters at 500 Republica are unremarkable. A narrow bed. A desk with a terminal. A viewport showing the mid-level cityscape. 100 meters of vertical drop to the next traffic lane, and then the lit geometry of Coruscant extending to the horizon like an argument that will never be resolved. He sits cross-legged on the floor, closes his eyes, and puts his awareness inside his own body. The Sith alchemy technique carries no name in any tradition the Jedi would recognize. He found it in a recovered holocron in the original timeline, years into Vader's service, years after the suit had already made it irrelevant, and spent an idle hour parsing its architecture the way engineers study bridges they will never cross. He had not imagined then that he would use it. He begins with connective tissue. Both shoulders. The ligaments there are young and resilient, but young and resilient means still developing, which means still optimizable. He works through the collagen alignment at the granular level, not rewriting, adjusting, coaxing the protein chains into configurations that will hold significantly more stress before failure. The process takes concentration and produces no visible result and will mean, in approximately 6 months, that his shoulders can absorb an impact that would tear a normal man's arms free. He moves to the knees, then the dominant arm. He knows exactly where a lightsaber cuts, because he knows exactly where Obi-Wan's blade landed on Mustafar. He knows the radius of the strike, the angle, the point of contact. He reinforces both legs at the structural points Mustafar targeted. He reinforces the left arm, the one that is flesh now, that he intends to keep. He will not lose these limbs again. He will not lose any of them. He will not wake up in machinery and spend 26 years breathing through a machine he has no choice, but to call himself. The physical work takes 45 minutes. He holds the stillness when it is done. Then he does the second thing, the more difficult thing. He reaches into his own force presence and builds a surface over it, not a wall, a skin, the way a skilled forger builds a reading over a different document without destroying what is underneath, vague ambition, imprecisely directed. A young man's unexamined dissatisfactions, the specific restless energy of someone who has not yet identified what they want and is beginning to suspect the Jedi Order cannot give it to them. The texture Palpatine is cultivating without knowing it is being cultivated deliberately. He constructs it with care. Not too complete reads as fabricated. Just enough. The watercolor suggestion of a door beginning to open in a direction Palpatine will recognize. The real presence is underneath it. Watching, waiting, he opens his eyes. Across the building, in the gilded office with the ceremonial guards and the 2 gaps in their rotation, Palpatine settles at his desk with the quiet satisfaction of a man watching a long investment begin to compound. The boy is more sophisticated than expected, more self-aware, more conscious of the gap between the Council's institutional judgment and his own instincts. A development, not a complication. Foundation work, solidifying, another year of careful tending, another pressure applied to the right fracture lines, and the most powerful force sensitive in recorded history will be looking for a door out of the order. He will ensure that door opens exactly where he intends. He begins drafting the note to Dooku. Private channel. Encrypted to the secondary frequency. 3 sentences. The boy is developing nicely. Accelerate the second phase. He does not realize the boy can feel that note being written. Level 1313 sits approximately 800 levels below the Senate district, deep enough that the city's actual infrastructure becomes visible in the walls. Power conduit runs in thick parallel bundles along the ceiling. Heat exchange pipes sweat condensation in the cooler ambient temperature. Old Republic utility markings stencil every door in bureaucratic shorthand nobody has needed to read for decades. The light here is orange and functional, cast by fixtures designed for illumination rather than impression. Nothing in these corridors was built to communicate anything except machinery operates here. And the machinery does not care about you. Ahsoka follows him down the final service passage at the professional distance of a Padawan, who is not going to show that she doesn't entirely trust this. 8 weeks in, she has learned that his suggestions are not actually suggestions, and that questions addressed to his back tend to return answers she has to sit with before they open. He stops outside a door marked with 2 parallel horizontal lines in faded orange. Industrial standard for cleared space, floor load bearing, no structural supports. He pushes it open. Inside, high ceiling. Cleared floor, whatever the old occupant left long since stripped to bare walls. The room is large enough to train in, small enough to hear breathing. The air tastes of metal particulate and old coolant and the particular settled silence of spaces that have been empty long enough to forget noise. This isn't a council-approved training site, Ahsoka says. No, he says. It isn't. He walks to the center of the cleared floor and sits cross-legged, facing no particular direction. Does not look at her. Waits. She stands in the doorway a moment longer than is strictly comfortable. Then, she crosses the threshold, because something about him holds her attention in a way she has no vocabulary for yet. He is not teaching her the way a 19-year-old teaches. He is teaching her the way a general briefs a lieutenant, as though she has already agreed to the mission and the only remaining question is her preparation for it. She sits across from him, close enough to hear clearly, far enough to feel like she chose the distance herself. "Close your eyes," he says. She does. She waits for the instruction she expects. Clear your mind. Find the center. Let the Force arrive through stillness. She has received this instruction from 4 different masters in as many years. She knows the shape of it. He says, "What does the Force feel like right now?" "Calm," she says. "Present, like." That's the performance. His voice carries no criticism, just precision. You heard "close your eyes" and you started performing calm. I'm not asking for the performance. A pause. What does the Force actually feel like right now? She stays with this. The room hums faintly with distant infrastructure. Her heartbeat is audible to herself. Uncertain, she says. Eventually, watchful, better, the temple, teaches you to quiet that feeling, to return it to calm. Yes, don't. She opens one eye. He is looking at the middle distance. Expression carrying the focused blankness of someone reading something that isn't there. The Jedi teach suppression, he says. They frame it as mastery. It isn't mastery, it's management. There is a significant difference. A river controlled by building a wall across it is not a mastered river. It is a delayed flood. He looks at her directly. Observe the watchfulness. Don't quiet it. Don't amplify it. Let it exist and tell me what it knows. He never taught her this. He was too young and too thoroughly inside the system he was describing to see it clearly enough to name it. She learned Force neutrality alone, in years of exile, through the specific education that comes from being nearly destroyed by your own feelings and surviving anyway. She became what she became in spite of her training, not because of it. He gives her the 20-year head start he never had. He does not know if it will be enough. He gives it anyway. Ahsoka closes both eyes. He watches her work. She is exceptional. The temple's records convey the fact of it, but not the immediacy, the way her Force sensitivity moves. Lateral and precise where his is vast and difficult. His is a river. Hers is a blade. She will not overpower opponents. She will read them before they understand they are being read. The temple has been teaching her not to trust what she reads, to quiet it, to bring it back to the approved register of Jedi calm. He intends to stop that. It feels, she says slowly, like the floor is completely solid, but I'm not sure it's solid in the right direction. He is quiet for a moment. Good. File that. That's data. She opens her eyes. What kind of data? The kind that tells you something in this room doesn't fit the surface reading of it. He meets her gaze without elaboration. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to be more precise. She stares at him. He is 19. She does not have the framework to process the contradiction, and she knows she doesn't have it, which is somehow worse than simply not having it. The combat session begins 40 minutes into the first visit, and does not look like any sparring she has done in the temple. She expects demonstration. She expects technique shown slowly, form walked through for observation and mirroring. She knows this pedagogical structure. She is good at learning inside it. What she gets is, his lightsaber ignites, and without ceremony or announcement he attacks, not hard, not close to full speed, but in a specific direction, thrust, diagonal cut, pommel feint. And he does not telegraph any of it in the ways she has been trained to watch for. He moves like someone who has already decided what he is going to do, and is waiting to see whether she has the instincts to stop it. She does. Barely. They settle into a rhythm. She uses a Taru, Form 4, acrobatic, mobile, built for smaller practitioners who want to turn speed and reach advantage into an offense larger opponents can't track. She is good at it. She has practiced the spinning transitions until they are reflex, the aerial combinations until they arrive without thought. She knows this, and she knows that she knows it, which is its own kind of confidence. He watches every move. His right arm occasionally telegraphs a follow-through that doesn't come. She notices this twice, files it, can't determine what it means. After 12 minutes, he stops mid-exchange and steps back. "Your right shoulder," he says. She has both blades raised. What about it? Before the spinning kick, it drops. A quarter inch, no more. But it drops every time, and it drops first, before anything else in your body commits to the movement. He looks at her with the attentive calm of someone describing a structural fault in a bridge. Anyone who survives the first 30 seconds against you will notice it. She wants to dispute this. Her Ataru form is cleaner than any Padawan her age in the temple. Master Plo told her so. And Master Plo does not offer assessments he hasn't earned. She says instead, "You could see that from over there?" "I could see it from the corridor," he says, "and it is delivered without cruelty or pride, simply as a unit of measurement, which makes it worse." "Fine, how do I fix it?" "You don't fix it right now. You know it exists and you account for it." He settles back into his stance and ignites his blade again. The fix comes from repetition. The accounting comes from now. There's a second thing. She waits. Ataru works against opponents who are impressed by the acrobatics. The rotation, the aerial transitions, they function because opponents hesitate. The hesitation is the actual attack vector, not the blade. He looks at her steadily. "The moment you face someone who has seen enough Ataru to not hesitate, I'm exposed on the landing," she says. "Every time. You're also exposed on the extension. And your second rotation is slower than the first by approximately 15%, which you compensate for by pushing harder through the force, which is audible to anyone force-sensitive within range." She stares at him. He attacks before she can answer, the combination built specifically for the landing exposure he just named, and she feels the cold flat of his training saber stop 1 centimeter from her ribs, and understands, with a clarity that is not comfortable, that he was not describing a theoretical problem. Again, he says, they spar for another 40 minutes. She is furious throughout, not at him but at the shoulder, at the landing, at the 15% drag she can now feel every time she runs the second rotation and cannot unfeel. She is also filing every correction with the methodical precision of someone who has already decided that frustration and improvement are the same motion running in different directions. When both blades are down and the orange light is painting the cleared floor its flat industrial color, she asks him, "Why are you teaching me things the masters at the temple wouldn't?" He picks up his lightsaber, turns it once in his hand, the way someone handles a familiar weight while deciding how honest to be. "Because the masters at the temple have never fought a war," he says. "I have." She stares at him. He is 19. She cannot find the framework that makes that sentence weigh what it weighs, and she can feel that she cannot find it, which is its own information, the same way the floor had felt solid in the wrong direction. Something is present here that does not fit the surface reading of it. She files it. She does not yet know where. He walks toward the door, stops without turning. His voice carries back across the cleared floor with the matter-of-fact quality of someone closing a logistics meeting. Same time. Next week. She will come back next week. And the week after that. And across the months of the early war's grinding campaign, the crystal rubble battlefields, the briefings and the casualties and the long hyperspace corridors between engagements. She will come back to level 1313 and sit on the cleared floor and learn to observe what the Force actually says rather than what she has been trained to want it to say. He does not tell her she is the most important person in his reformation of the galaxy. He does not tell her that he has stood across a Sith temple floor from what she will become and made the wrong choice and has been paying for it since. He does not tell her that every lesson he gives her is a debt he is repaying to someone who will never know it was owed. He tells her to drop the right shoulder less. He tells her that the second rotation needs 2 more months of isolated drilling before she stops compensating with the Force. He tells her to trust the watchful feeling and make it precise. Two people bound by a history only one of them carries, in a room 800 levels below the light. What they are to each other has no name in any tradition the Jedi would recognize. He does not need it to have a name, he needs it to hold. The moon has no name in Republic cartography, only a designation, a grid reference, the kind of alphanumeric label assigned to rocks that matter solely for what sits on them. What sits on this one is a separatist forward command node, 8 stories of reinforced durasteel built into the far wall of a crater. Antenna arrays pointed at 3 Republic supply corridors simultaneously, its garrison sized for security rather than engagement. The 501st has been working the outer defensive perimeter for 6 hours. Standard campaign architecture, press the droid lines, keep the garrison occupied, create the window. The objective is the battle plan stored in the node's central processing core. The tactical rationale for a solo infiltration is sound. A single force-sensitive operative moves faster than a fire team, leaves less forensic evidence, and the approach vectors that work for one body do not work for 4. This is what Vader Anakin tells Rex when he volunteers. Rex listens with the professional patience of a soldier who has heard a great many tactical rationales and learned to distinguish the ones being offered from the ones doing the actual work. He doesn't raise an objection. This is what General Skywalker does: solo penetrations, impossible windows, results that should not be arithmetically available given the stated entry conditions. The 501st has learned to categorize these as events rather than decisions. Ahsoka is managing droid suppression on the eastern flank. She doesn't see him go. Standard retrieval, Vader Anakin says, checking nothing on his belt because everything on his belt is already where it needs to be. 40 minutes. We'll hold the perimeter, Rex says. I know. He walks toward the installation's service entrance alone. The narration does not follow Rex's accounting of the next 40 minutes. The narration follows something else. The service entrance is a maintenance hatch on the installation's north face, camera coverage degraded by 6 hours of adjacent combat. He enters at the hatch's frame rather than through it, a habit. Structuring approach so no sensor captures a clean profile. Inside, he seals the blast door. He cuts communications to the outside. The familiar register of his internal voice, slightly sardonic, self-aware, the cadence that has been performing Anakin Skywalker since Christophsis, goes quiet. What replaces it is older, more meticulous. The voice of a man doing maintenance. The installation hums. This is the first thing, the specific layered quality of the hum, the overlapping frequencies of a command node running at operational capacity. Droid coordination processors cycling through maintenance intervals. Communication equipment on 4 channels simultaneously. The carrier signals of military-grade broadcast hardware. Pressurized door seals regulating to equalized ambient, the building's slow breath. The faint mechanical vibration of bipedal units in the corridors, balance processing running constant, transmitting through the floor at a frequency below sound, but perceived like it. He moves through the first corridor. The droid coordination processors stop. Not abruptly. The way a sound stops when the mechanism producing it reaches the end of its function and does not begin again. The hum drops by a specific register, and the absence settles in the air before the acoustic environment adjusts around it. He moves through the second corridor. 2 of the 4 communication channels go quiet. The carrier signals end, not interrupted, concluded. Whatever was maintaining them has stopped maintaining them. The remaining 2 channels hold for approximately 90 seconds. Then, they too fall away, and the only communication equipment still running is the emergency broadcast array in the central processing room, which requires direct manual activation. He passes the 3rd junction. The pressurized door seals stop cycling. It is quiet enough now that his footsteps are audible. He slows them. Not for concealment, there is nothing left in this section requiring concealment from, but because his own movement in new silence is information, and he has always processed information cleanly. The central processing room. He enters. 1 battle droid B1 series, lower chassis destroyed in the percussion of whatever occurred in the anteroom, pulls itself by its arms toward the emergency broadcast terminal. Distance, approximately 4 meters. Motivation processors intact. Communication systems functional. If it reaches the terminal and activates the emergency array, A signal propagates on Republic-monitored frequencies, and something complicated begins. He watches it. It is slow. The arms have reasonable purchase on smooth durasteel. It covers approximately 2 meters in the time he stands at the room's threshold, still, hands at his sides. Then, it does not cover any more. He has not moved. He has not gestured. He will find, when he checks, that there is nothing on his hands, nothing on his sleeves, nothing that constitutes evidence of the specific mechanics of what has just not happened. The droid has simply reached the limit of its remaining function. Or something like that. He retrieves the battle plans from the primary terminal, wipes the access log. He spends 11 minutes completing work that the next several minutes will require him to report took 40. The Separatist command structure on this world lasted 3 more weeks. It cost the Republic 460 lives and was destroyed by a Republic orbital bombardment that took everything standing and left nothing recoverable. It lasts 12 minutes. 0 Republic lives. 0 Republic credits. The investigation will find cascading droid malfunction, a power surge from adjacent combat degrading internal regulation. No lightsaber evidence, nothing that requires a Jedi explanation. He unseals the blast door. He reconnects communications to the outside. He walks back toward the perimeter. Rex is where he left him. Command post at the eastern edge of the engagement zone, the 501st holding the droid lines with the economy of a unit that has been doing this long enough to make it look like administration rather than battle. He looks up when Vader Anakin approaches, and his eyes do the thing they always do. A single pass, top to bottom. Reading the physical evidence of 40 minutes the same way a medic reads a casualty report. Battle plans? Rex says. Recovered, he holds up the data chip. Command staff neutralized. The installation shows internal systems failure, cascading droid malfunction, likely power surge from our perimeter engagement. I'd recommend routing this to intelligence rather than acting on it directly. If we exploit it in the field, they'll know it was compromised. Rex takes the chip, looks at it. His thumb runs across the surface once in the way fingers move when a mind is elsewhere. Then, he looks at Vader Anakin with the careful, unhurried attention of a man taking a measurement. General, Rex says, you've got something on your sleeve. Vader Anakin looks down at his sleeve. It is clean. Both sleeves are clean. There is nothing on either of them. No dust, no scoring, no thermal residue, none of the physical evidence that 40 minutes inside an active Separatist command installation should, by any reasonable physics, have deposited on a person. Rex is not describing what he sees. Rex is describing what the absence of what he expects to see tells him. The space between them is very quiet. Rex's expression is not suspicion. It is not accusation. It is the look of a man standing at a threshold he has located with some precision, examining it, and deciding with great deliberateness not to cross it. He is a soldier who has spent his entire existence following orders built into his genetic architecture. And somewhere in the last several months of serving under this particular general, he has developed a secondary architecture, a set of choices he makes independently about what he will and will not ask, and it is that architecture operating right now. Dust from the facility, Vader Anakin says. Rex looks at the clean sleeve for one more moment. Right, he says. Dust, he pockets the data chip and turns back to the engagement line, and that is the end of the conversation, because both of them understand it is complete. The crater floor is gray rock and long shadows in the low moonlight. The shuttle sits at the far edge with its running lights on, waiting. He walks toward it at the pace of a man who has completed a mission within parameters and has no particular reason to hurry. He does not feel satisfied. He does not feel guilty. The guilt, the thing that should be present, the thing that was present once, that lived in the place behind the sternum and made its weight known on mornings after, is not there. It has not been there for some time. He has noted its absence the way you note a draft in a room when the source has been sealed, aware that something changed, uncertain precisely when. What is in its place is efficiency. The clean, frictionless sense of a problem resolved by the application of sufficient precision. He boards the shuttle. The ramp closes behind him. The fact that he has stopped feeling guilty is the thing he will not examine. Not yet. The 501st Medical Bay occupies the garrison's third level, a long room of scan tables and diagnostic equipment lit by the flat, shadowless light that medical spaces require and that makes everyone inside them look slightly more tired than they are. The air smells of antiseptic and the particular metallic undertone of recycled atmosphere run through military-grade filtration. It is functional, unglamorous, and maintained with the meticulous care of a unit whose medic considers sloppiness a personal insult. Kix runs the examinations himself. He always does. He is the kind of clone who treats medicine as a discipline rather than a logistics function, the kind who cross-references scanned data against previous records, who flags anomalies regardless of whether they affect combat readiness, who has opinions about Republic medical protocols and does not keep those opinions entirely to himself. Vader Anakin has noted him. He notes everyone who pays close attention to things other people dismiss. The cover is standard, post-campaign neural fatigue assessment, combat stress protocols, routine maintenance of the Republic's most expensive military asset. Unusual for a general to be present at a routine medical rotation. Not unprecedented, Anakin Skywalker has a documented pattern of showing up where he isn't strictly required, usually because something operational is happening that requires his oversight. Kix accepts his presence with the professional neutrality of a medic who has learned not to ask operational questions during medical procedures. The clones cycle through in pairs. Each scan takes 4 minutes. The diagnostic display above each table shows the standard suite: cardiovascular function, neurochemical markers, skeletal stress indicators from combat impact accumulation. The long list of metrics Kix uses to determine whether a trooper is fit for rotation or needs a week in the garrison's recovery ward. Vader Anakin watches each display from the room's perimeter. He is not looking at the cardiovascular function. He is not looking at the neurochemical markers. He is looking at the neural implant readings, nested in the lower quadrant of each scan. Small. Quiet. The kind of data that appears in a medical display the way background architecture appears in a hologram. Present. Unremarkable. Easily overlooked by anyone who isn't specifically looking for it. He knows exactly what he is looking for. He spent years walking corridors full of stormtroopers with the cold, abstract curiosity of a man too thoroughly broken to feel horror anymore, turning over the question of whether the men following Palpatine's orders did so because they chose to, or because they had never been given the option of choice. He found the answer in a Sith datachron recovered from a Kaminoan archive, 11 years after Order 66 had already made the answer irrelevant. He is not going to let it be irrelevant this time. After 40 minutes, Kix steps away from his station to retrieve a secondary scanner from the supply alcove. The motion takes approximately 90 seconds. In those 90 seconds, Kix returns to find Vader Anakin reviewing the previous trooper's scan results, standing at the display terminal, right arm extended toward the interface, his hand hovering a half centimeter from the screen rather than touching it. His index finger traces a reading he isn't yet ready to confirm. Then, the arm stops at full extension, pauses 1 beat too long, and consciously pulls back. He doesn't tap the screen. He steps back. He reads from a distance instead. Kix notes this. He files it alongside the other things he files about the general: the stillness, the sleeping 4 hours a night, the questions asked casually that never turn out to be casual. He doesn't know what the paused arm means, but he files it where he files the things he intends to understand eventually. He says nothing. He resumes his work. When Rex's turn comes, Vader Anakin steps forward and tells Kix he'll take this one himself. He says it the way he says most things, matter of fact, not inviting discussion. Kix looks at him for a half second, then gathers his datapad and steps outside with the professional discretion of someone who has learned that the general's unusual requests tend to have operational reasoning he isn't cleared for. Rex sits on the scan table with the patient alertness of a soldier who knows his general doesn't do anything casually. He watches Vader Anakin pull up the diagnostic display, and his expression carries the specific quality of a man waiting for information he isn't certain he wants. Vader Anakin looks at the neural implant reading. It is there. Small, neural integrated, seated at the base of the skull where the brainstem meets the cervical spine. wired into the executive processing architecture with the invisible precision of something designed to be unfindable by anyone not already looking. Dormant, waiting for a specific encrypted signal that will override higher-order emotional processing, dissolve the architecture of independent judgment, and reduce the man sitting on the table to a single operational directive. The chip is a perfect piece of engineering. It required considerable sophistication to build and considerable patience to deploy. He knows who built it, and who gave the order to deploy it, and what the order will be when it finally arrives. Rex pulled his helmet visor down and aimed at Ahsoka Tano, and tried, with everything left in him, to stop himself. His hands shook. He could not stop himself. He dug her grave on a crashed gunship because he thought she was dead, and then he dug his own beside it, because he did not know another way to carry what he'd done. He spent years on a barren planet with 2 brothers, exiled from everything, waiting to become old enough for it to stop hurting. Rex is sitting on a scan table in the Coruscant garrison, asking with his eyes whether there is something wrong. And there is something wrong, and Vader Anakin puts the display into neutral and tells him the scan looks clean. He tells him this in the voice he uses for things that are operationally true, even when they are not entirely factually complete. Then, he asks, casually, the way questions get asked when the questioner is processing something else, whether Rex finds the standard neural health rotations useful for the unit's cohesion. Rex considers this. The men appreciate being looked after, he says, knowing someone's tracking the long-term data, not just the mission readiness numbers. A pause. The length of a man deciding whether to say the rest of it. Not all commanders bother. Vader Anakin looks at the scan display for a moment longer. I intend to be thorough, he says. He calls Kix back in and moves to the next table, and Rex watches him go with the expression of a man who has received an answer to a question he didn't quite know he was asking. He drafts the welfare initiative proposal in his quarters that night, working from first principles because he cannot use sources. The proposal cannot go to the Jedi Council. This is the first and most critical constraint. If the Council learns about the inhibitor chips, their institutional reflex is to escalate, bring it to the Chancellor's office, request a Senate inquiry. Follow the procedural pathways that the Republic has built for handling exactly this kind of systemic breach. These pathways lead, without exception, directly to the man who designed the breach. Palpatine will learn that the cannon is visible, and Palpatine, given that information, will accelerate. He needs the cannon dismantled before Palpatine knows it is being touched. The cover is this, a clone welfare initiative, funded jointly through his personal operational budget and a Republic medical welfare program that Padam has been developing for 18 months. A program she designed because she genuinely believes the clones deserve better than field triage, and because she is the kind of person who turns genuine belief into legislative architecture. He is going to use that architecture. She does not know he is going to use it. She does not need to know yet. The initiative's stated purpose: enhanced neural health monitoring for clone troopers exhibiting combat stress markers, combined with a preventive anti-seizure treatment protocol for units with prolonged high-intensity deployment records. The 501st qualifies easily. Kix will run the procedures. The paperwork will route through the medical welfare program and generate no operational flags. The treatment is real. He designed it to be real. Kix will be performing actual preventive neurology, and the clones receiving it will have measurably improved neural regulation responses. And when anyone audits the medical outcomes, the data will be clean. The treatment also, incidentally, includes a surgical micro-procedure involving a focused electromagnetic pulse delivered via a calibrated induction coil, a tool that exists in every Republic medical bay for disrupting arrhythmic cardiac tissue, applied at the specific frequency that renders the inhibitor chip's signal processing architecture inert. The chip remains physically in place. Nothing is removed. The deactivation leaves no evidence visible to standard medical scanning. It looks, if anyone looks, like a standard equipment calibration artifact. He knows the frequency because the Kaminoan design schematics were stored in a Sith datachron he recovered from an Imperial archive. He found them 11 years after Order 66, in a darkened room, alone, too late to matter. He sat with them for a long time before filing them in the part of his mind where he keeps the things that are too heavy to examine directly and too important to put down. He commits the 501st first. Kix will complete the full regiment within 6 weeks. Then, he will identify reasons, combat stress indicators, campaign rotation schedules, the legitimate and easily documented grounds of an attentive general looking after his men, to extend the initiative to other units. The 212th, Obi-Wan's regiment, will be next. Then, the Coruscant Guard, because of their proximity to the Senate and therefore to Palpatine, which makes them both the most dangerous and the most urgent. Then, the rest, unit by unit, following the invisible geometry of which clones are where and how much time he has before Palpatine starts wondering why his signal is receiving no response. He is, one surgical procedure at a time, lifting Palpatine's hand from the trigger. It will take months. It requires patience he has in abundance, precision he has from long practice, and the specific cold satisfaction of a man who knows exactly what he is preventing and can do the arithmetic. He finishes the proposal documentation at 2 a.m. and leaves it in Kix's medical intake queue with a handwritten addendum. His handwriting is cramped and very small, the legacy of learning to write economically in spaces where economy was not optional. A habit so deep now that it no longer feels like a habit, just the natural size of his letters. The addendum says, Rex first, then the rest. Don't record this. Kix finds the addendum at the end of his shift. He reads it twice. He sits with it for a long time in the empty medical bay, the flat light still running above the vacant scan tables, his datapad balanced on his knee. He is a medic. His entire professional architecture is built around documentation, around the principle that what is not recorded did not happen, and what did not happen cannot be learned from. He believes this. He has believed it since his first year in service. He reads the addendum a third time. He thinks about the general's arm, that half-second pause at full extension during the scan review. He files it alongside everything else he cannot yet explain. He makes his decision without drama, without the kind of visible internal conflict that would require a witness to resolve. He opens the medical intake file. He removes the handwritten addendum from the physical documentation. He takes the piece of paper to the secure waste disposal unit, the one that doesn't feed the garrison's standard recycling stream, and processes it. Then he opens a new entry in his personal encrypted notes, a file that has never been connected to any Republic medical record, that lives on a storage chip he wears on a cord around his neck under his armor. He types 2 words. Rex first. He closes the file. He turns off the lights and goes to find his bunk, and behind him the medical bay settles into the quiet of a room that holds, now, a secret with no record and no source, only the fact of a decision made by a small man who is trying, as best he can, to understand what kind of war he is actually in. The lake at night on Naboo is a specific kind of beautiful, the kind that doesn't announce itself. No spectacle in it, just the dark water and the reflection of the house lights spreading across the surface in broken columns, and the willowing trees bending slightly in the evening air that comes off the water cold and mineral, carrying the smell of deep fresh water and the particular quiet of a place that has not had a war in it recently. He stands at the edge of the dock for a moment before going inside. The 501st is on stand down at the Coruscant garrison. Kix is 4 weeks into the inhibitor initiative and has filed no anomalous medical reports. The chips are going quiet, one by one, invisible work in invisible increments, the kind of change that only becomes visible in retrospect when someone asks why a command sent to 3 million clones returned nothing. He is approximately 7 months from Palpatine asking that question. He has been sleeping 4 hours a night since Christophsis and does not particularly notice it. Padam arranged the leave. She has political instincts sharp enough to know that a general who doesn't stop moving eventually stops thinking clearly, and strategic thinking is the most important thing she currently needs from him. She arranged it through official channels, filed the appropriate rest rotation documentation, and told him to come to Naboo. He came. He goes inside. She is at the long table by the water facing window. Working, she works the way she does everything, completely, without visible effort, the kind of focus that looks like ease, until you understand how much architecture is behind it. She looks up when he comes in from the dock, and something in her expression adjusts. Not alarm. The small recalibration of a person who has noticed that the person they've been waiting for has been standing outside longer than the temperature justified. "You've been out there for 20 minutes, she says. "Thinking," he says, "about the war, about something I need to tell you." She sets down her stylus. She does not ask him to sit. She does not change her posture dramatically or prepare her face for difficult news. She simply puts down what she was holding and gives him her full attention, which is the thing she offers instead of theater. He sits across from her at the table. He has thought, carefully, about how to frame this. He cannot tell her he is from the future, that sentence spoken plainly. Closes more doors than it opens. She is a politician. She will want to know the mechanism. She will spend energy she doesn't have on a question that has no useful answer. What she needs is not the origin of his knowledge. What she needs is the knowledge itself, and the confidence that it is reliable. "I've been having visions," he says. Force visions. They've been sustained and coherent in a way that isn't typical. Not flashes, not symbols. Sequential, specific. I've had them since before Christophsis, and they've been getting clearer. She watches him. "They show me the Republic falling," he says. "Not from the separatists, from within. This war ends, and what replaces it is not a republic. It's an empire, a single executive authority with a permanent military, no Senate with real power, no rule of law that isn't contingent on the executive's approval." He holds her gaze. "The visions show me who is responsible for engineering this outcome." A pause. The lake outside the window is very still. "Palpatine," he says. She does not make a sound. She does not move. She sits with it for exactly the length of time a mind like hers needs to test the proposition against everything it already knows. The emergency powers consolidation, the wartime authority expansions, the gradual accumulation of executive precedent she has been documenting in Senate committee filings for 2 years and sending to colleagues who read them and shrug and say these are extraordinary times. Then she asks 3 questions, and she asks them without space between them, in the rapid-fire sequence of a person who has already decided that shock is not a useful response. How certain are you? Certain enough to act on. What evidence exists outside the visions? Financial trails connecting separatist funding to shell companies I can trace to the Chancellor's office. Communications I can authenticate. The structure of the clone army, its true command architecture, which doesn't route through the Senate Military Council the way everyone believes it does. What do you need from me? He never told her. He watched Palpatine dismantle the Republic piece by piece and never told her until the Senate was already voting away its own authority. Until she was standing in the chamber saying, "This is how liberty dies," with thunderous applause. Until it was far too late, and she was dying in a medical bay with his children barely born, and her last words were about good still existing in him. He protected her from the truth because he believed she needed protection. He was catastrophically wrong about what she needed. She trusts him immediately. This is the thing that costs him something, not her skepticism, not the questions, but the speed and completeness of the trust, the fact that she asks, "What do you need from me?" rather than asking him to prove he deserves to be believed. He does not deserve to be believed absolutely. He knows exactly what his hands have done. She doesn't ask him to account for it. She asks what he needs. His hands, resting on the table, go very still for a moment. Then he answers. "A network," he says. "People whose loyalty to the Republic predates their loyalty to any chancellor. People who can move procedurally, in public, slowly enough that it doesn't look like an opposition movement until it's already an institutional majority." She picks up her stylus. They work for 3 hours. Padam has names he expected and names he didn't. Bail Organa is first. She names him without hesitation, and the way she names him tells Vader Anakin what he already knew. Organa's principled positions in committee are not political performance. They are character. The man will be exactly who she says he is, when it matters. Mon Mothma is second. Vader Anakin knows this name the way he knows a word in a language he stopped speaking. It surfaces with the particular weight of history attached to it. She is the most legally sophisticated mind in the Senate, Padam says. And what she means by that is not that Mothma knows the rules, but that Mothma understands the rules as architecture, as something built for a purpose that can be either honored or subverted depending on the hands using it. He gives her the evidence thread in return. He names 3 separatist financial backers whose connections to the Chancellor's office can be legally established through public Senate records and banking clan filings that have been available for 2 years and which nobody has connected because nobody was looking for a connection. He explains how the threads tie together. He is careful about what he claims to know and how, framing it as intelligence synthesis, as the pattern recognition of a military officer who has been reviewing separatist logistical architecture for campaign planning purposes. This is technically true. The intelligence synthesis happened to be informed by memories of documents he read in another life. But the documents are real, and the connections are real, and the legal trail, when Padam builds it, will hold. The goal is not revelation. This is the thing he explains carefully, because she needs to understand the strategic logic before she can execute it. A dramatic revelation, standing before the Senate and naming Palpatine as Sith Lord, gives Palpatine a moment to perform. He is the galaxy's most accomplished performer. Give him a moment, and he will use it. And what the Senate will see is not a Sith Lord unmasked, but a devoted Chancellor besieged by a desperate political opposition, willing to deploy Jedi authority against a democratically elected executive. That narrative is the thing that destroyed the Jedi in the original timeline. He will not hand it to Palpatine again. What he wants instead is a cage built from law. Remove the emergency powers clause by procedural motion, not as an attack on the Chancellor, but as a scheduled sunset of wartime authority on a predefined timeline. Frame it as responsible governance. 11 senators have already expressed private concern about the consolidation. With Padam's network, there are enough votes. Do it publicly, on the record, so that Palpatine's opposition to it reads as a Chancellor resisting the Republic's return to constitutional normalcy. Dissolve the Chancellor's direct military authority by routing it back through the Senate Military Council, where it always should have been. Again, procedural. Again, framed not as opposition, but as restoration. Every move made in the open, every vote on the record. When Palpatine finally moves against them, he will be moving against the rule of law, rather than political opponents. That framing is the difference between a Jedi conspiracy and a constitutional crisis. In one, the Jedi lose. In the other, Palpatine does. Padam makes notes for 45 minutes without stopping. She asks precise questions and receives precise answers, and builds the architecture as he watches, finding the procedural angles with the practiced efficiency of a mind that has spent its entire adult life understanding exactly how power moves through institutional channels and where it can be redirected. He watches her and understands something he spent 23 years not understanding. She was never a liability. She was never the vulnerability Palpatine could exploit. She was this, exactly this, and he protected her from the information that would have let her be it when it mattered. Sometime after midnight she sends him to sleep, in the tone of voice she uses when she is giving an instruction she expects to be followed. He goes to the doorway and stops. She is already back to her notes. The window behind her shows the lake in full dark now, the house lights on the water, the willowing trees barely visible at the edge of the reflection. She works with the complete, unhurried absorption of a person who is not afraid of what she is doing and is not afraid of what she is working against. In the original timeline, he could not protect her. He was too young and too frightened and too alone, and he reached for power instead of partnership and destroyed the only thing that might have saved them both. He closes the door behind him and goes back inside to help her plan the end of the Sith. Mace Windu has been reviewing the 501st's battle records for 6 months, and the numbers have stopped making sense in a way that he can no longer attribute to exceptional Jedi instincts. He does this work alone, in his quarters, late at night, when the temple is quiet enough to think, without interruption. He has pulled every engagement record for the unit since Christophsis, 53 engagements across 14 systems, ranging from platoon-level skirmishes to full division operations. He has laid them against the Republic Army's average performance metrics, against the performance metrics of the other high-performing units, against the statistical baseline for Jedi-led operations specifically. The 501st's casualty rates are the lowest in the Grand Army, not by a small margin, by a margin that should not be possible given the engagements they have been tasked with. He is not celebrating this. He has been a soldier long enough to know that impossibly good outcomes require explanation, and that the explanations available to him are not equally troubling. Explanation 1. Anakin Skywalker is the most gifted battlefield commander the Order has ever produced, and the 501st benefits from that gift in ways that defy conventional statistical benchmarks. Mace believes this is partially true. Explanation 2. Somebody in the 501st's command structure is receiving advance intelligence about separatist deployments that is not appearing in Republic intelligence briefings. Not operational intelligence, something more specific. Positioning data. Unit strength assessments. The kind of information that explains why, in 11 separate engagements, the 501st arrived at the precise angle that exposed the enemy's undefended flank before the enemy had established it as a flank. Somebody knows where the separatists are going to be before they get there. He thinks about the Outer Rim moon, the installation that suffered cascading droid malfunction with no surviving witnesses and no lightsaber evidence. He thinks about the battle plans recovered with 0 Republic casualties. He thinks about a general who has been present at every anomalous outcome and who, when Mace reaches for him through the Force to take the measure of him, returns a reading that is perfectly correct in every particular, and somehow, in its very correctness, wrong. He files a request to have Anakin Skywalker called before the Council. The Council chamber sits at the top of the temple's central spire, and the light at midday comes through the curved transparisteel windows at an angle that leaves nothing shadowed. 13 seats in a circle. The kind of room where things said clearly cannot be taken back, and things left unsaid are as audible as anything spoken. Vader Anakin sits in the chair at the chamber center and waits. He has been in this room hundreds of times. He knows the specific acoustic quality of it, the way sound carries in a circle, the way a silence here feels inhabited rather than empty. He knows where Mace sits and where Yoda sits, and where the light falls on each of them in the afternoon. He knows what they are going to say before they say it, not because he has Force read the room, but because he has had a very long time to understand exactly how this institution thinks. Mace opens the session without ceremony. Master Skywalker. The title sits between them, a courtesy, not an acknowledgement. Mace does not grant acknowledgements easily. The Council has been reviewing the 501st Legion's operational records over the past 2 campaign cycles. The outcomes have been remarkable. Consistently so. We wanted to discuss the nature of your tactical methodology. A pause. The diplomatic register of a man who has prepared a careful approach to a question he has not yet asked directly. Vader Anakin lets the pause extend 1 beat beyond what is expected. He does not fill it immediately with the reassuring response that a 19-year-old Anakin Skywalker would have filled it with, the defensive explanation, the slightly wounded awareness that he was being examined. The performance of having nothing to hide. He lets it sit, and he watches Mace clock the length of the pause, and then he speaks. "You're right to be concerned," he says. "The Jedi Order's rules of engagement were written for a different galaxy. They account for every contingency except winning." Mace's eyes narrow by a fraction. At the far point of the circle, Yoda's ears drop, not alarm. The physical register of an ancient mind receiving a piece of data it is moving to a different part of the archive. Vader Anakin continues before Mace can respond, and what he does is not argue, what he does is build. He constructs with the patience of a master architect working from plans the audience cannot see. A tactical justification for every decision in every engagement the Council has flagged. He names casualty projections and explains the intelligence synthesis that enabled him to revise them. He describes terrain assessments, logistics calculations, the specific vulnerabilities in Separatist, command structures that his operational experience has allowed him to identify faster than Republic intelligence can formally document. Every word is accurate. Every conclusion is defensible. Every piece of evidence he presents is evidence the Council already has access to. Assembled into a pattern they had not assembled themselves. He never addresses the question of where the intelligence synthesis originates. He constructs an architecture around it that makes the question difficult to articulate without sounding like an accusation of something specific, and he does this so smoothly that by the time Chiari Mundi opens his mouth to ask the direct question, Mace has already shifted the inquiry's direction with a hand gesture that says, "Not yet." He had been defensive in this chamber. Emotional, antagonistic in the specific way of a man who is afraid of being seen and responds to that fear by becoming difficult to look at directly. They had always seen a brilliant, compromised man, brilliant enough to be indispensable, compromised enough to be managed. They were right about both things and wrong about what the combination meant. They see a brilliant man who is not controlled by anything. There is no fear in the room. There is no defensiveness. There is no emotional heat that might explain the anomalies or make them legible as the byproduct of passion. There is only this, a 19-year-old face attached to a mind that is answering institutional scrutiny the way a very senior official answers institutional scrutiny, with complete cooperation that reveals precisely nothing. That is significantly more frightening. The session ends without a formal resolution because there is nothing to resolve formally. Vader Anakin answers every question he is asked and declines, through perfect technical compliance, to answer the question beneath the questions. He thanks the council for their diligence. He means it, in the specific way that a man who built a prison means it when he thanks the guard for checking the locks. He leaves. The chamber holds the silence for a moment. Then Yoda speaks, to no one in particular, in the voice he uses when he is saying a thing he has been sitting with for some time. "Not the boy we trained, this is," he says. "Something different has returned." Mace looks at the empty chair at the room's center. He does not ask what Yoda means by returned. He is not sure he wants the answer. He asks Ahsoka to come to his office the following morning, alone. She arrives with the precise punctuality of someone who respects appointments and the slightly compressed alertness of someone who already knows this meeting is not routine. She moves in a room the way water moves in a space, finding the efficient path without apparent effort. Mace chooses his words with care. He tells her the council has noted some unusual characteristics in her master's tactical approach, that as the person who trains closest with him, her observations would be valuable, that he would appreciate a formal report on anything she has found irregular. He watches her receive this. She is quiet for a moment in the specific way she is quiet when she is deciding something. Then she says, "He trains differently than any Jedi I've seen." Mace waits, and he knows things he shouldn't know yet. She pauses. When we spar, his right arm occasionally telegraphs a follow-through. He then consciously stops, like he's catching himself, like the movement he's stopping is something he learned a long time ago. Mace says nothing. He is listening with the full attention of a man who has just heard a piece of data that fits into a space he didn't know was empty. "I don't know what it means," she says. "I've filed it. I haven't been able to explain it." He asks her to put it all in a formal report and submit it through the appropriate channel. She says, "Yes, Master Windu." She leaves. She goes directly to find Anakin. He is in the 501st Training Hall running forms, alone, and she tells him the moment she finds him. Directly, without preamble, the way he taught her to deliver intelligence, what happened, who requested it, what was asked of her. She tells him she said she would file the report. She does not tell him she has already decided what will not be in it. He lowers his training saber. He looks at her for a moment with the expression she has been trying to categorize for over a year. Not cold exactly, not calculating exactly, but something in between those things that she doesn't have a precise word for yet. "I know," he says. She waits. Nothing follows. "Shouldn't that worry you?" she asks. He is quiet for a moment. Then, "Ahsoka. The council should be watching me. Anyone who's paying attention should be watching me." He meets her eyes steadily. "That's not the problem. The problem is whether what they're watching matters more than what I'm doing." She knows it isn't an answer. He knows she knows. Neither of them speaks to fill the gap, because she has learned, in the months since level 1313, that some of the most important information he gives her arrives in the space between what he says and what he doesn't. She lets it stand. She walks out of the training hall, and behind her he resumes the form, and his right arm completes its follow-through without stopping, because she is gone, and there is no longer a performance to maintain. And for a few minutes in the empty hall he simply moves the way he actually moves, the way a man moves who learned to fight in a body he can't lose again, with technique refined across decades he cannot explain to anyone. 60 meters above him, in the council spire, Mace Windu stands at the chamber window and looks at the city and turns over Yoda's words until they mean something he can act on. Something different has returned. He does not yet know from where. In the original timeline, Dooku's archive was destroyed within hours of his death. Palpatine issued the destruction order before the invisible hand had finished breaking apart above Coruscant, a quiet directive, one intelligence operative, 12 years of encrypted records rendered into nothing in an afternoon, communications between a Sith master and his apprentice, the financial architecture of a manufactured war, asset lists, operational directives, the names of every separatist leader who knew they were serving a Dark Lord rather than a political cause, and the leverage points that kept each of them obedient. Vader Anakin was standing in the Chancellor's office when the order was given. He was adjusting to the specific gravity of a dead man's weight on his conscience, and Palpatine discussed the archive's destruction in the same tone he would use to cancel an appointment. He has thought about that archive for 23 years. The message moves through Padam's network, the neutral party contacts she has cultivated in separatist-adjacent diplomatic circles. People who operate in the space between both sides of the war's financial architecture without formal allegiance to either. The message is not from the Republic. It is not from the Jedi Order. It is from a private party in possession of information capable of catastrophic damage to both the Chancellor's public position and to Dooku's standing within the Confederacy. Information that will be used regardless of Dooku's cooperation, but that, with his cooperation, might serve a purpose he would recognize as rational. The appeal is specific, he is a chess player, and this is framed as a move, not surrender. Repositioning, he accepts the meeting. The location is a decommissioned fuel depot at the edge of monitored space. 4 pressurized storage modules bolted to a dormant relay station, the kind of infrastructure that served its purpose during the Republic's expansion era and has been drifting since, too small to salvage, too stable to decay. The light inside runs on emergency backup cells, amber, flat, without direction. Everything here is the color of something that stopped being used a long time ago. Vader Anakin has been inside for 3 hours when the Separatist transport drops from hyperspace. He has spent the time standing still near the far wall of the main module, in the specific stillness of someone who does not need to pace to think. Dooku arrives with 2 Magna Guards. He is immaculate. This is the first thing. The white hair and the trimmed beard, and the robes that carry themselves with the gravity of cloth, that has never been asked to do anything undignified. He is 73 years old, and every year of it has been spent in rooms designed to confirm his importance. He moves through the depot's airlock without acknowledging the quality of the space. Because men like Dooku do not acknowledge the quality of the space, they bring their quality with them. He stops when he sees Anakin Skywalker standing at the far end of the corridor. He looks at him for a moment. The Magna Guards hold their flanking positions. A Jedi, Dooku says. Not a question. Not a retreat. The flat assessment of a man cataloging an unexpected variable. A representative, Vader Anakin says. Dooku's eyes move across him with the unhurried precision of 7 decades of reading people. He is looking for the tell, the nervousness beneath the composure, the performed confidence that will give him the entry point that lets him run the conversation. He finds none of these. What he finds instead is something he does not immediately have a category for, a stillness that does not belong to a 19-year-old face, attached to a gaze that is tracking him the way a man tracks something he has already decided how to handle. You are not here representing the Jedi Council, Dooku says. No, the Chancellor's opposition then, Amidala's faction. I'm here representing the outcome, Vader Anakin says. The specific outcome, not a faction. Dooku steps forward 2 paces, enough to bring him fully into the amber light. Then tell me what outcome a Jedi Padawan believes he's in a position to offer Count Dooku of Sereno. A death that doesn't come from your master's order. The depot is very quiet. The backup cells hum at a frequency slightly below conversation. Outside the reinforced viewports, the stars are fixed and indifferent. Dooku's expression does not break. It is too disciplined for breaking. But something behind it shifts. A recalibration, small and precise. The movement of a man who has been given a piece of information he has been carrying alone for some time, and is now being asked to set it on a table where it becomes real. He is a Sith apprentice. He has watched Palpatine operate across a decade. He has watched what happened to Maul. He understands the rule of two not as philosophy, but as actuarial fact. The apprentice's usefulness is finite, and its conclusion is always the same. He has thought about this conclusion. He has simply not had occasion to discuss it with anyone. "You're very young to be making this kind of offer," Dooku says. "I'm aware of how I look," Vader Anakin says. Dooku died on his knees with his hands bound behind him, unable in his final moment to conceive that the passionate, volatile Padawan he had watched being cultivated was capable of the cold execution Palpatine required. The surprise on his face had been genuine. He had not believed Anakin Skywalker was that man yet. The man in Anakin's body executed Darth Sidious once, with a technique drawn from a dead Sith Lord's holocron and 4 months of deliberate preparation. He has been that man for a long time. Dooku is, by any available measure, a significantly smaller problem. The negotiation takes 20 minutes. It has the quality of a contract review conducted by people who understand every clause and are not interested in performing anything except the transaction. Vader Anakin wants one thing: transmission access to the encrypted archive, 12 years of communications, financial records, the full architecture of the manufactured war. The identities and leverage points of everyone Sidious controls in both the Senate and the Confederacy. He will authenticate the archive through Republic intelligence channels and release it publicly. He will not suppress any part of it. He offers one thing: a death administered by Vader Anakin rather than whatever Palpatine has planned. The distinction matters because Palpatine's endings for obsolete assets carry messages. They are designed to be seen by the next asset and the one after that. They are, by necessity, theatrical and extended. Dooku knows this. He has delivered several of them himself. "If I transmit that archive," Dooku says, "I am destroying every institutional structure I spent a decade building. Every structure you built was built to serve your master's timeline, not yours. He was always going to dismantle it the moment it stopped serving his purposes. I'm proposing a shorter timeline with the same endpoint." Dooku looks at him with the expression of a man receiving an accurate assessment and deciding, carefully, whether the accuracy earns his respect or simply his contempt. "You speak like someone who has lived this already," he says. Vader Anakin says nothing. After a moment, Dooku says, "And the Republic you're building in its place. You believe it survives? I believe it's the only thing with a chance of surviving. You can position yourself relative to what survives or relative to what doesn't. I stopped working against the inevitable a long time ago." Dooku considers this for a moment that is neither long nor short. Then he transmits the archive. The Magna Guards activate when the transmission completes. They have been programmed to read the transfer's conclusion as a hostile act, a reasonable precaution, professionally designed. They are in motion for 11 seconds. Dooku does not move during those 11 seconds. He stands with the stillness of a man who has made his decision and is waiting for the decision to find its conclusion. He is, Vader Anakin thinks, in his way, brave. Not the hot bravery of passion, but the cold bravery of someone who chose their end, rather than waiting for their master to choose it for them. Vader Anakin steps forward. He does not reach for his lightsaber. He extends his awareness to the precise cluster of neural tissue at the base of Dooku's brainstem and applies pressure, not the violence of a grip, but something calibrated to the specific threshold required. The amount of force necessary to interrupt the electrical continuity that maintains consciousness. No more. Dooku's eyes close. He settles, not a fall, a settling, the way a man sits when something holding him upright is removed with care, and Vader Anakin catches the weight and lowers it to the floor and takes a moment to arrange it with the particular attention of someone who has decided that this, at least, he will do correctly. He stands. He looks at the depot's amber walls, the blank viewports, the space beyond them that shows nothing in every direction. He sends the authentication package through 3 separate relays to Republic intelligence. He has pre-arranged the broadcast, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Jedi High Council, 53 HoloNet networks, simultaneous transmission across every major news distribution channel in the Republic. No recall option. He initiates it. Within 48 hours, the Separatist Council begins fracturing in the specific way that coalitions fracture when the architecture holding them together is publicly revealed to have been serving someone else's interests. Quickly, recriminatorily, each faction blaming the others for a complicity that was shared evenly. The military command structure, without Dooku's authority above it and Sidious's hand behind it, begins making the kinds of uncoordinated decisions that military structures make when they are operating from ideology rather than strategy. The war is not over, but its spine has been broken. On Coruscant, in the private office with the gilded door and the two gaps in the guard rotation, Palpatine watches a HoloNet screen that is showing, simultaneously on every channel, documents he has spent 12 years ensuring would never exist in accessible form. His face carries an expression that has no precedent in any public record of it, not the grandfatherly warmth, not the practiced concern, not any of the 47 registered emotional registers that constitute the Chancellor's public repertoire. The narration does not name what is on his face. It notes only that his hands, resting on the surface of the desk, are absolutely still. Order 66 goes out as a holographic command. Palpatine's face appears simultaneously before clone commanders across the galaxy, the familiar features. The practiced gravity of a man who has spent decades performing concern, delivering the directive in the voice he uses for things he wants to feel inevitable. The signal propagates through the command network. The encrypted frequency reaches 3 million inhibitor chips in 37 seconds. Nothing happens. Captain Rex, on the 501st's Coruscant garrison floor, feels the chip activate. Feels it the way Kix described it during the deactivation procedure. A brief pressure at the base of his skull. The sensation of something trying to complete a circuit that no longer connects to anything. His hand does not move to his blaster. His eyes do not find General Kenobi's back. He stands in the morning light of the garrison's main floor and watches clone troopers across the room receive the same signal and produce the same nothing, and he breathes steadily, and he thinks about 2 words filed on a chip worn around a medic's neck. In the Senate building, the Military Oversight Committee's emergency authority transfer has been in legal effect for 3 days. The clones are Army personnel. Their chain of command runs through the Senate Military Council. The Chancellor's holographic command does not have the authority it had last week, and the signal it sent traveled through a network that no longer answers to it. Palpatine's nuclear option detonates in a vacuum. He understands what has happened before the monitoring system confirms it. He is sitting in his private office reviewing the procedural calendar for the morning session when the response data stops returning, and the silence of 3 million chips not activating is louder, in its way, than any sound the galaxy has made in decades. He closes the monitoring system. He sits for a moment with the stillness that his hands have learned. Then, he goes to the Senate. The full session is already in progress when he arrives, called, per the schedule Padam's network, spent 6 weeks engineering, for the formal certification of the Military Council authority transfer. A procedural matter. A scheduled conclusion to the emergency powers sunset, voted into motion 4 months ago, built quietly and in public by 11 senators, who never once framed it as opposition to the Chancellor, and therefore gave him nothing to oppose, without opposing the law itself. Palpatine walks to the Chancellor's podium, and the session's procedural business continues around him, and he allows this for approximately 30 seconds, surveying the chamber, understanding the architecture of what has been built. The legal structure. The recorded session, the 50,000 transmission points broadcasting this chamber's audio and visual feed to every HoloNet relay in Republic. Space. He has no private space left in which to operate. The cage was built around him while he was watching something else. He looks across the chamber. He finds Anakin Skywalker's eyes. Anakin is standing in the gallery above the senatorial pods, in the position of a Jedi Knight attending a Republic session, and the way he is standing is the way he has been standing all year, perfectly correct. Exactly where he should be, the performance so complete that the wrongness of it is only visible if you already know what you are looking at. Palpatine looks at those eyes, and for the first time in decades, for the first time, perhaps, in the full span of his extraordinary life, Darth Sidious is looked at by someone who understands him completely. Not feared him, not been seduced by him, not been manipulated or cultivated or maneuvered. Understood, seen in the specific clinical way that a man is seen by someone who has studied him from the inside of his own methodology, who has watched every technique from the receiving end, who has known since the beginning exactly what game was being played and played a different one. He is being looked at by someone older than himself. The mask does not fall dramatically. There is no theatrical moment of exposure. It simply becomes unnecessary, the way a performance becomes unnecessary when the audience reveals it already knew the ending. Palpatine sets it down the way a very old man sets down something he has been carrying for too long, with the specific quality of exhaustion that comes not from the weight of the object, but from the duration of the carrying. The yellow eyes surface. The face that has spent decades performing warmth arranges itself into nothing performed at all. He draws his lightsaber. Mace and 3 masters walked into a private office. He played the victim. He played it so well that Anakin arrived and made the worst choice of his life on the floor of that room, and the Republic died with its greatest protector as its executioner. He is in the open chamber. The security record is running. 50,000 relay points are broadcasting. Every senator in the galaxy is watching the Supreme Chancellor draw a red lightsaber, and there is no private space in which to construct a narrative around it, no moment to perform victimhood before witnesses, no Anakin Skywalker arriving without context. There is only the monster underneath the performance, visible to everyone simultaneously. The Force lightning comes first, not aimed at a target but at the ceiling, a spectacular discharge that walks across the chamber's upper architecture in arcs of white-blue fire, 3,000 years of Republic history illuminated in Sith electricity. It is both attack and message, the message being this is what I am, and this is what I was always going to do. And none of your law or your procedure changes what I am capable of. The senators are already moving, the instinct for survival older than any institutional allegiance. Ahsoka Tano enters from the East Gallery, both sabers drawn. The second blade, a reverse grip Shoto acquired during the war's middle campaigns, its shorter reach turning her Ataru transitions into something no opponent had yet found the angle to counter, ignites alongside the primary. She moves the way he has watched her move for years, and what she is now is exactly what he spent every session at level 1313 trying to build, someone who reads the room before the room knows it's being read. Vader Anakin drops from the west. Palpatine turns to meet him and unleashes lightning directly, not a ceiling display now, but focused, channeled. The full application of a technique he has spent decades refining on targets he wanted to destroy slowly. It crosses the chamber floor in a half-second. Vader Anakin raises his hands and absorbs it. Not deflection, not redirection. He draws it into his body the way a ground wire draws current, accepts the full charge, takes it through his chest and his arms, and down through his feet into the Senate chamber's metal floor, and it hurts. It hurts with the particular totality of electricity finding paths through organic tissue, every nerve in both arms announcing itself simultaneously. His vision whitening at the edges for a moment before it clears. He did this in practice for 4 months. He knew what it would feel like. He did it anyway, because Palpatine needs to keep lightning as his primary offensive commitment for the next 60 seconds, and the only way to ensure that is to demonstrate it is not working. He stays standing. He looks at Palpatine across the smoking floor. Ahsoka moves. She has not engaged Palpatine directly. She is not trying to overpower a Sith Lord who has been practicing since before her species developed agriculture. She is moving around him. Fast, relentlessly fast, the specific speed of a practitioner who was taught from her first lesson to think laterally, cutting across the angles Palpatine needs to hold sustained technique. Appearing at the edges of his peripheral vision to force constant positional adjustment, eliminating the 2-second windows his form requires to execute its most destructive combinations. She is not a weapon being swung at him. She is the walls of the room getting smaller. Palpatine pivots between them. He drives lightning at Ahsoka. She deflects and moves. The deflection redirected down not at him, but into the chamber floor, denying him the feedback loop his form runs on. He drives a force push at Vader Anakin. Vader Anakin absorbs the kinetic force through his stance, wide and planted, converting momentum into friction. He drives his lightsaber in a Juyo combination toward Ahsoka's left flank. She is not there when it arrives. Already 3 meters away, the level 1313 training evident in every repositioning. He is the most powerful Sith in 1,000 years of refined practice. He has survived this long through intelligence and ruthlessness and the absolute certainty that he is the most dangerous thing in any room. He cannot find the angle. For 30 seconds of the most sustained combat the Senate chamber will ever witness, he cannot find the angle, and the 30 seconds costs him what he cannot afford to spend: time. He makes the decision. Essence transfer. The ancient Sith technique for surviving a body's death by projecting consciousness into an alternative vessel. He has prepared for this. 3 senatorial guards at the chamber's perimeter, ordinary men whose force neutrality makes them simple to inhabit. His body can die. He will not. He reaches into the force and projects. He hits something like a wall, not resistance. A wall has a surface you push against and feel pushback. This has no surface. It is the absence of the space he is trying to project into. As though the force itself has been rearranged in the 3 meters between his body and any available vessel, and as he pushes against the absence it does not push back. It pulls. He feels his force presence being drawn inward. The lights in the Senate chamber flicker. The pods sway on their repulsor lift moorings. Every force-sensitive being in the building feels something that has no name. A pressure, massive and sourceless, lasting exactly 3 seconds, and then a quiet so complete and strange, it takes a moment to understand that the quiet is the sound of something that was in the Force, no longer being in it. Vader Anakin had spent 4 months working through the contents of a recovered holocron, one recovered from a long-dead Sith library. A lord of terrible hunger whose capacity to consume Force-sensitive life force directly had never been replicated in any tradition since. He did not master the technique. He mastered enough of it. The rest, he adapted. 4 months of adaptation in a sealed room, coming out of sessions pale and shaking and eating twice what his body normally required. Because the technique did not merely redirect power, but metabolized it, and the cost of practicing that was paid in ways that left no visible marks. The script renders it in what it looks like: Palpatine attempting to project, hitting the wall, being pulled back. Not the body dying, the Force presence drawn inward and collapsed. The lights flickering. The Force screaming somewhere outside of normal perception. Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, architect of a millennium of patience and plan and counterplan, does not die in the posture he has always occupied in other people's fears. He does not die on his feet. He does not die defiant. He sits down in a Senate chair as though very tired, and stops. The chamber is absolutely still. Then Ahsoka's twin blades retract, the amber light cycling off, the hilts returning to her hands. She stands in the residue of what just happened, and looks at the chair and looks at Vader Anakin across the floor. "Is that it?" she says. Her voice is very even. "That's it," he says. A pause. The emergency lighting has come on, casting the chamber in the flat amber of systems that weren't designed for this kind of aftermath. Somewhere above them, the session's broadcast feed is still running. 50,000 relay points, still carrying. "You've been planning this for a while," she says. "Since Christophsis," he says. She looks at him for a long moment. He looks back. They have reached the place they have been building toward since level 1313, since the first lesson, since she told Mace she would file a report and came to Anakin first. They have reached the point where she could ask the questions, and he would have to answer them. Both of them know this. Neither of them is ready for it yet. The Republic Senate is in chaos outside this chamber. The political aftermath of what just broadcast across the HoloNet is already in motion. The legal structure Padden built, the contacts she has positioned, the procedural architecture designed precisely for this moment and ready to operate the instant the moment arrived. There is work to do. There is a great deal of work to do, and it requires the kind of clear, precise attention that cannot coexist with an unfinished conversation. Ahsoka reattaches her sabers to her belt. She walks toward the chamber exit without looking back. She does not ask the questions tonight. The questions will keep. What she has understood, standing in the smoke and the amber light with the most powerful force presence she has ever felt in the galaxy no longer present in it, is that the answers were always going to cost something she hasn't yet decided how to pay. She will decide. She has learned, from the man she is walking away from, to observe what she knows without quieting it. Tonight, she goes to manage the aftermath. 6 months after the Senate chamber. The Republic does not become a different thing overnight. Institutions that took decades to corrupt take time to uncorrupt. The rot has to be located, named, documented, and removed by people who are willing to do that work without the clarity of crisis to sustain them. Padme Amidala is elected Supreme Chancellor by the largest margin in Republic history, which means she inherits the largest administrative reconstruction in Republic history. And she begins it the morning after the election with the focused attention of someone who has been planning for exactly this and is not interested in the ceremony of the moment when there is the substance of it to address. The Separatist war ends not in conquest, but in negotiation. This is her insistence, against the counsel of several military advisors who believe that a one war should look like a one war. She holds the position. Worlds that join the Confederacy under coercion are offered Republic membership on equal terms, with the specific guarantees they were denied before: representation, economic equity, the procedural protections that were available in principle and unavailable in practice. Worlds that seceded freely, with legitimate grievances against the Republic's institutional failures, are offered sovereignty agreements and normalized trade. Not a clean peace, a workable one. The kind that can be maintained by people who are tired of fighting and have something better to do. The Jedi Order receives a reform mandate from the Senate Military Council. The High Council may continue its traditional function, but unilateral military authority has been transferred to the Republic's civilian oversight structure permanently. Integrate into Republic law or declare independence and forfeit Republic resources. The debate within the Order is not brief. Half the masters accept. Half do not, citing the fundamental incompatibility of Jedi independence with civilian command authority, and they leave, not in anger, in principle, which is the most Jedi way of leaving available to them. They go, and the Order that remains is smaller, and Vader Anakin privately believes it is better. The Jedi who stayed chose to stay knowing exactly what they were choosing. That is a different foundation than the one they built the old Order on. Captain Rex is offered a commission in the Republic's newly restructured volunteer military. He takes it. The clones, freed from the inhibitor architecture, are given choices for the first time in their lives: service, settlement, civilian transition. Assisted relocation to designated worlds where communities of their brothers are already building something that has no precedent and therefore no constraints. Some stay in uniform, some don't. All of them make the choice themselves. Ahsoka Tano is appointed first-hand to the Chancellor's Security Council, a role that had no name before she was given it. Civilian military advisor with operational authority, the kind of position that gets invented when an institution needs someone with a specific combination of capabilities it has never needed to formally categorize before. She is 16. She will grow into it. She is already growing into it. Mace Windu finds him in the temple's Eastern meditation garden one morning, 3 months after the election. He is one of the masters who stayed. He accepted the reform with the specific quality of a man who disagrees with a decision and implements it anyway, because implementation is what integrity looks like when the decision is not yours to reverse. He has been watching Vader Anakin for 2 years with the expression of someone who knows the shape of a question he has not yet found the words for. He sits across from him in the garden's morning light and does not offer preamble. "What are you?" he asks. It is not an accusation. It is not a threat. It is the honest question of a man who has run out of other questions, who has reviewed 2 years of impossible battle records, who has felt a Sith presence collapse in the Senate chamber and watched the person who collapsed it walk away without yellow eyes, who has sat in the council chamber and heard Yoda say something different has returned, and never stopped thinking about what it means for something to return. Vader Anakin is quiet for a moment. The garden around them holds the particular Coruscant morning quality, the city noise filtered by the temple's stone, the light coming at a low angle through the meditation space's open ceiling, the sound of water from a feature somewhere nearby that someone has maintained for 1,000 years without needing a reason. "I'm what the chosen one was supposed to be," he says, "if the order had done its job in the first place." Mace receives this. He does not flinch from it. He looks at Vader Anakin with the Shatterpoint ability that has been telling him for 2 years that the fault lines in this man run so deep and so old that mapping them would take a lifetime, and that they have somehow been load-bearing rather than structural failures. "You don't have yellow eyes," Mace says. "Not anymore." They look at each other. There is more that could be said. The whole history of it. The 23 years of another timeline's wreckage. The cold efficiency, and the hidden training, and the archive, and the depot, and the chamber. But Mace Windu did not survive to this age by demanding explanations for things that have already produced their consequences. He is a man who knows that some things operate outside the available frameworks, and the appropriate response is to note them and continue. He nods once. The way a very old man nods when he has accepted something he does not entirely understand, and has decided that understanding is not the prerequisite for acceptance. He stands. He walks away down the garden path without looking back. Vader Anakin watches him go. The Senate building's western balcony faces the Coruscant skyline at an angle that catches the sunset fully, the light coming across the urban horizon in long, warm gradients, finding the cranes on a dozen reconstruction sites and turning their industrial geometry momentarily golden. The city is still rebuilding. It will be rebuilding for years. Reconstruction on this scale is not a project with an end date, but with a direction. And direction, he has learned, is enough. He is watching the cranes. He is doing what he always does when he looks at anything, cataloging, evaluating, the strategic instinct running its background process on sight lines and structural progress, and the particular density of traffic in the mid-level lanes that suggests the civilian economy is recovering faster than the official projections estimated. 23 years of being the Emperor's instrument of control do not simply cease. The habits of observation are too deep. He has stopped fighting this. He simply notes what the observation is for now, which is different from what it was for before, and that difference is enough. Padme comes out from the interior and stands beside him. She has been in session since early morning. The Chancellor's day does not end at sunset, and she has never expected it to. She is 6 months into the work of rebuilding a republic, and she approaches that work with the same focused exhaustion she brings to everything that matters, which means she is simultaneously tired and more completely present than most people manage when they are rested. She looks at the cranes. She stands beside him for a moment in the easy silence of two people who have stopped needing to fill the space between them with anything except what's there. Then she touches his hand. Her fingers find his, and the cataloging stops. Not replaced by anything dramatic, not replaced by warmth or relief or any of the feelings he has spent a decade learning to locate in himself again. Just stopped. The calculation ceasing in the specific way it ceases when the person next to you makes the city less interesting than the fact of them. He looks down at their hands. She died. He killed her. Not with intention, but with the specific, irreversible violence of a man who loved something so desperately he destroyed it. He spent 23 years in a machine that kept him breathing, because he couldn't even die correctly. He spent 23 years carrying her name in a place where names go, when there is nothing left to do with them. She is alive. She is the supreme chancellor of a republic that still exists because two people sat at a lake house table and built a cage from law and patience. The children inside her, Luke and Leia, unborn still possible, will come into a galaxy that does not need them to be saviors. They will be born to parents who are alive. They will grow up without the empire that was supposed to define them. They will be, simply, themselves, whatever that turns out to be. He looks up at the window. The glass carries the reflection of the balcony, the lights of the city behind them. The two of them standing, the sky moving toward full dark above the urban horizon. His eyes in the reflection are blue. He holds her hand and watches the city and does not calculate anything at all for a long time. He had come back from the end of everything, full of the dark, and had used it, all of it, to build something that did not need the dark anymore. Whether that was balance, he did not know. Whether it mattered what it was called, he had stopped asking. He looked at the lights. They were enough. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.